Growing up as a kid in the United States really makes you believe that anything is possible. Like most Americans, I was raised with a deep love for this country and an ironclad certainty that with enough grit and determination, I could achieve anything I set my mind to. Yet for many Americans, the American dream is not alive and well, and that's a sentiment that's fueling the dangerous rise of Donald Trump and his right-wing movement. By the time the phrase "the American dream" was popularized in the 1930s, it had already existed as an ethos for generations. There is a reason why masses of workers from all around the world saw the United States as a place where aristocratic domination could not hold them back. Even Karl Marx looked to the world's most progressive nation to lead a new era of ascendancy for the working classes after the triumph of the Union and the destruction of slavery in the Civil War. But today, few at home or abroad have such hopes for our country. Put simply, the American dream is dead because ordinary Americans say that it's dead.
Attractive home of John and Margaret Bryant, the home they've always dreamed of, the happiest investment they have ever made. At last, the Bryants have all the space they need. This is how American families are living in their new home.
Only 27% of people polled this year said that the American dream holds true. Just 13 years ago, it was double that number. So what's happened to change so many of our minds? That polling correlates closely to both income and education, both of which are proxies for social class. In other words, our national crisis of confidence is mostly a working class problem. Critics would counter that Americans as a whole are wealthier than ever. But rather than argue with them, if we want to figure out why people don't feel like they're staying above water, we need to examine issues of income disparity and social welfare. The widening life expectancy gap between poor and rich Americans, which now averages more than 10 years, is the most dramatic example of a basic point that most of us take for granted. A kid growing up in a wealthy area is likely to have a wildly better life than a kid in a poor area. We know this. Meanwhile, the US has one of the lowest rates of social mobility in the rich world. The Harvard economist Raj Chetty has shown the depth of the problem. By his measure, the chance that a child will earn more than their parents has fallen from 90% for children born in 1940 to 50% for children born in the 1980s. The problem of social mobility is compounded by our threadbare welfare state, which is unable to deliver results akin to universal welfare states in Europe. Essential things like childcare for new families, guaranteed national health care, and free vocation and trade schools. Another key difference between the US and Northern Europe, the role of trade unions and other forms of working class representation. In 1983, over 20% of Americans belonged to a union. That number is just 10% now, compared with almost 70% in countries like Denmark and Sweden. The loss of good union jobs, especially in manufacturing, has wreaked havoc in communities across the country. We face a serious problem with drug use and overdoses, with well over 100,000 people dying last year alone. Alcohol abuse has also gone up dramatically, as have alcohol-related deaths. And between mass shootings and ordinary crime, it's no wonder that many Americans don't feel safe. Our politicians seem to accept as a natural fact that we're destined to be a country with 8 times the murder rate of Germany, and where children need to pay attention during active shooter drills. Taken together, it's obvious that you'd have a better chance of living the American dream in Europe than you would in America. It's no wonder that for many American workers, the right-wing populism of Donald Trump has so much appeal. Democrats have been the party of toxic positivity, telling people that everything is going great and not speaking to the anger that so many workers feel. They've embraced the support of professional class voters and elite interests to the detriment of their traditional working class base. As Chuck Schumer famously put it, "For every blue-collar Democrat we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we will pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia." And far more than any Democratic president in US history, Biden's victory in 2020 depended not on blue-collar workers, but white-collar professionals. Now, Republicans may not be the party of the working class, but it's hard to say that today's Democrats are either. Yet, although he speaks to anger, Trump continually misdirects that anger. He scapegoats immigrants for the loss of good union jobs and the erosion of our sense of community. Meanwhile, he celebrates the billionaires and big businesses who eliminated those jobs in the first place. In a conversation with Elon Musk, literally the world's richest man, Trump congratulated him for being the greatest cutter of jobs in America today.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, "You want to quit?" They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, "That's okay, you're all gone."
This is not a solution for the working class. The left must offer an alternative. Thankfully, the United States has a rich, dynamic economy. We can afford to do things. We can pursue tax policies that use that national wealth, which all of us have helped make, to create greater state support for healthcare, childcare, housing, and job training. We can also support worker unionization and expand policies to revitalize domestic manufacturing. As for concerns over immigration, a key part of Trump's appeal, we can support native-born workers in the job market without elevating their situation to a zero-sum, existential battle in which either new Americans or established Americans will survive. But we also need to rally behind a vision of politics to go with these democratic socialist policies. A vision of politics in which we assert the moral worth of every American and strive together to build a healthier and more optimistic society. We can't pretend like things are going great in our country, but we also must reject the pessimism that says, this is just the way things are.